Thanks, Paul, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm really very happy to see so many people here on this call, and I hope that we'll make the next 35 minutes both entertaining, interesting, informative, and also give you a chance just to look at your own resilience through the eyes of the animals. You know, during COVID, as Paul was saying, we've all had to do some pretty different things, and one of the things I spent a lot of time doing was reflecting on the literally hundreds of safaris that I've been on, and realizing that in every single one of them, I've learned something. And there is something to be learned from nature all the time, wherever you are and in whatever nature you're in. But I've learned mine mostly in Africa. And so it's really the opportunity to look at and see what we can learn from nature. At the same time, on my professional life, I've spent a lot of time working with people on resilience, executives and leaders in companies, mostly in North America, but also around the world. And that resilience thing kept coming back at me. And I thought, wait a minute, wildlife shows us so much resilience. I've got so many examples of that. And that's what gave rise to this presentation. As Paul said, I grew up in Africa. I was educated there. I had my degree was from the University of Cape Town. And I maintained my close contacts with Africa, particularly with Zimbabwe. Where I grew up and where I had so much of my childhood. But my career has been here in the US and in Canada and in Europe. And I had the great good fortune and the privilege to be CEO of 3 different companies. So I learned a bit about leadership that way. And then since then, I've been doing a lot of work in leadership, executive coaching, and leadership development work with different organizations, as well as having the privilege of leading an alliance CEO group. So I have these two things going on in my life: leadership and wildlife, and and it's that combination actually that led me to form and to found my company Tasimba, and that the purpose of that company is to take people on a deep immersion into the wilderness and have them learn about life, about themselves, about nature, about the planet, and take away something of deep value that they didn't have and had not had before. So having said that, I just want to start with one quote. There are other quotes that will occur later, but one quote. Albert Einstein said, "Look deep into nature, and then you will understand everything better." Classic safari shot. Late summer, grass is green. All the grazing herds are out there on the plains enjoying it. The wildebeest, giraffe, there's zebra in the background, there's impala around. All of the animals are really just fattening up on the grass of summer. And the first thing that happens is that in this part of the world is that after the summer rains come and it looks as good as this, then we get about 7 months of drought. And the first few months of that are okay, but it gets very hot in the latter part of in the early part of their spring before the rains come back. And as a result, a lot of the animals then have to scrounge for food, because here's what that plain starts to look like right after, towards the end of their dry season. All the grass is grazed down to the roots, and those animals are having now to scrounge and find sufficient nutrition in different grasses and different places in the forest and along the edge of the forest. And this is the first of the resilience part of nature, and that is all of these grazing animals finding a way to survive against and in that type of drought. So resilience, let's very briefly, it's the ability to bounce back from adversity or misfortune. And for us as human beings, it's a mindset. I'll show you that for animals, it's instinctive, but for us, it's a mindset. We have to prepare ourselves for it. And the best ways in which we do it are through a sense of purpose, knowing where we want to go, how we want to go, what we want to be, where we want to be, but having a specific sense of purpose. And with that goes a tremendous mental toughness, a mental toughness of saying, I'm not going to be deterred. I will do that. I will go past whatever obstacles I have to in order to get there. And always looking forward, because the whole idea of resilience is that you can't go back to where we were. That's gone. The resilience requires that we adapt to and go forward. The next most closely related part of resilience is managing our own stress. I'll talk to you about that as well and show that in wildlife. Adaptability, in other words, learning how to do different things or learning how to apply skills differently, that's another part of it. Agility, not just physical agility, mental agility, the ability to be able to quickly turn on a dime and change and do something differently in response to a new situation. Caring for others who are struggling. This you may say, well, how are we going to see that in wildlife? Well, I'll show you a couple of examples of that too. And then finally, being aware of what it takes to and what it involves, being involved and being in nature and being aware of everything around you and understanding just how precious it is. So let's take those one at a time. First of all, sense of purpose. Water, critical to life on Earth, critical to all the animals, of course, and nobody loves the water more than the elephants. When it's when all the water holes are full and the rains have come and the elephants are there, and not only are they drinking it, they are playing around in it, they're rolling in it, they're swimming in it, and they're spraying it all over their bodies. They just love water. And that's fine for a few months. But as the season goes on, the water holes start to dry up. And eventually you get to when all that's left in some of those water holes is mud. Now, elephants, being elephants, figure out actually if they spray and throw mud all over their bodies as well, it actually forms two things. It forms a bit of a blanket, but it also, and an air conditioner, but it also actually prevents them getting bug bites, which they can't reach or scratch. So that's part of their survival there. But the problem is that if there's no water, that's when elephants are in trouble, because they need about 150 liters each per day. So what we have then is elephants then set out, and they will go, and sometimes the matriarch leading this particular family will lead them for 100 miles or more in search of a particular water hole. How does she do that? Well, she will remember that in a severe drought many years ago, when she was a juvenile or a young adult, her matriarch led her family to that water hole. And so relentlessly and with a sense of real purpose, she will lead her family to find that water because it's so essential for their survival. That's resilience, because there was no choice but to go and to follow that sense of purpose. Here's a different situation. This ugly fella is a Cape buffalo. About 2,000 pounds of muscle, solid as all get out, bad attitude, not very good looking either, and hard-headed, that too. Well, let's talk about when lions are hungry. Lions have a risk and reward system, much like an investor. Low risk, low reward, high risk, high reward. So if they're not that hungry, low risk, take out an antelope. But it'll give you something to eat, but not a lot. If you want to feed the whole pride for a few days, have to go for buffalo. High risk, high reward. Taking down a buffalo is not easy for lions. And what happens is that if they manage to isolate one, they will spend quite a long time trying to bring it down to the ground. And meantime, that buffalo is very hard to bring down and is doing everything to avoid it. But the rest of the family then regroup and then actually come forward together, and their heads are down, very threatening, and they slowly just walk towards the lions, which are attacking their family member. And they mean business. So their resilience here is not accepting a situation which to them is completely unacceptable, and they will take it out on the lions. And the lions actually almost inevitably and always leave because they don't want to mess with buffalo. So the resilience of buffalo, first of all, with the one who's being attacked, is to fight back and just to be as strong as possible. And with the rest of them is to relieve the pressure and the threat to their family member. So as a quote for sense of purpose, every day, focus on your purpose. Remember why you do what you do. We don't get burned out because of what we do. We get burned out because we forget why we do it. And a personal favorite of mine, purpose is the reason you journey. Passion is the fire that lights the way. So what are our takeaways from this particular example? First of all, stay focused on where you're going and why, what it is you mean to achieve. Stay absolutely focused on that purpose. because the first key to resilience is being focused on it. And the second key is having mental toughness, being undeterred by any obstacles, any hurdles, anything in the way, but saying, I know I need to get to that outcome, and making sure that that is exactly what you do. Another part of staying true to your sense of purpose is forget about back to normal. And that's true today as well. We're not going back to normal. Normal has changed. COVID changed that. In the case of drought, going back to the old water hole is still not going to have any water in it if you're an elephant. So you have to keep going. You're going forward to the next thing, to the next normal. And in any role in which you are a leader, your resilience is more important than anybody's, because you need to lead with resilience so that others who are less resilient than you can follow. And that's what they need. They need to follow someone who is showing the kind of resilience that we're talking about here. Let's go on to managing stress. Here's another lovely shot, late evening, sundowner time actually. 5 zebras standing in the tall grass, stop grazing for a moment because they're all looking in the same direction. Why are they all looking in the same direction, you ask? Well, because there's a predator out there. How do they know that? Well, there will have been some alarm calls. Birds, barking baboons, an impala. There are different animals will set an alarm call, and immediately all the other prey animals will pay attention. Where's that? What is it? Even the giraffes will look in that same, when you see them looking in the same direction, they're looking at a predator. So first of all, in this stress situation, what these zebra are doing is figuring out, okay, how much of a threat is this? Because all prey animals have a safe zone which surrounds them. And it's the zone in which they know if the predator is outside of that zone, the predator is not going to catch them if they set off running. So as soon as the predator kind of crosses into the unsafe zone for them, that's when they run. So these zebras right now are assessing what to do. At some point, they decide this is serious. We're going to run. And then zebras will run. They run like the wind. Zebras don't run to anything. They only run from something, generally speaking, a predator. So here we've got the zebras are running now. One of two possible outcomes. One outcome is they outrun the lions, which is more often the case than not. Lions only have about a 30% success record when they're hunting. So the zebras run, get away with it. Alternatively, bad outcome for the zebras is one of them gets caught. But either way, the hunt ends. And when the hunt ends, the zebras immediately just put their heads down and start grazing again. They're over it. It's happened. Time to start grazing. Or even it's time to go just to the water hole. Get a nice cool drink because it had a little run there. So it needs to just get some water back in the system. But either way, what they're doing is they're relaxing and they're recovering from the stress. So the wildlife and the natural stress cycle looks like this. There's the stressor, that's your predator. When the stress is acute, biochemicals get released instantly into the body. And those biochemicals, like adrenaline, glucocorticoids, they are designed to fuel the fight or flight response. In the case of zebras, flight, run like the wind. And then when the hunt is over, they get to relax and they get to recover. And this is so important because what they're doing is by getting through relax and recovery, they're getting set up so that they're able to respond to the next stressor, the next time the predator comes or next time there is a stress. And there will be, maybe later today, certainly tomorrow. So they go through this acute cycle and they need the relax and recover part of it just as much as they need the reaction part of it. Now, we all know we're the smart ones. We're the ones with the big brain. We're the ones who figure everything out. We think about things. And so we have what I call a human short circuit. We still have a stressor. Let's say you're standing on a street corner and out of the corner of your eye, or you hear somebody hollering and you look up the hill and there's a large truck which is barreling down the hill out of control. Looks as though the brakes are gone. Biochemicals get released instantly into your body, and somehow you leap back about 6 feet, one jump, and the truck smacks into the tree that was right beside where you were standing. You got away from it and you're okay. But what we do then is very human. We start thinking about it. Whoa, that was close. Geez, if I hadn't jumped like that, that truck would definitely have hit me. How bad would that have been if the kids had been with me? Oh my God, how, that was so close. What if I hadn't seen it? So what are we doing? We're actually feeding right back into the stress. We're adding stress back to our system because we continue to think about it. And when we add more stress to the system, more biochemicals get released into our bodies. And what happens then is that part of the way they work is they shut down different parts of your body which are not needed for the fight or flight response. By shutting that down, they're actually then changing the dynamics of the internal dynamics of your body. So if this goes on too long, if we stay in the short circuit too long, we're actually damaging our health and damaging our bodies because there are biochemicals which are spinning around but nowhere to go because we're not actually using them other than to continue in our minds rolling around the stress. As humans, we seldom get to relax or recover. We stay in this chronic short circuit. And as a result, the difference between the zebras and us is that they're ready for another stress. We're often not. And that's when burnout occurs. So here's a quote from stress from a professor at the University of Toronto. You and I are very different creatures relative to any other wild vertebrates. We mull things over. We worry about the future and we think about the past, often continually. We know we're going to die. Animals don't think like we do. To which I add, and they don't have our stress. Because we manage to compound our own stresses. We manage to make stress chronic and not to learn how to relax and get over it. So what are our takeaways? First, focus on what is, not what might be or might have been or could have been, but just focus on what is. And in all cases, when you can, stop, take a deep breath, assess whether or not this is a situation that you must stress and act on immediately, or else just like the zebras, wait and see. Wait and see when the 5 of them are watching, is this something we need to react to? Because again, you're managing your stress. You're not overreacting to everything that might be the slightest possible stress. Stay calm. Stay in control of what's going on inside you, in your head, in your heart, in your gut. Stay in control of that so that you don't then panic yourself into a stressed response, which wasn't really necessary, or you don't keep yourself in a stressed response, which isn't healthy for you. Stay fit, eat well, get your rest. And to avoid burnout, take breaks to re-energize. We're not very good at that, a lot of us. If you just need an afternoon just to chill out and get over things, do so. If you need a weekend, better still. If you need a week or two, better still. And in all cases, if you can do it without taking your cell phone or without even looking at your cell phone, better still. So those are some of the ways in which we can manage stress well. Let's move on. Let's talk about adaptability. Now, we had 5 zebras all looking at a predator. Here we've got 8 roan antelope, all looking at a predator right in front of them. And they're not turned to run. Why? Well, they had the same thing going. They were there and they were aware of a predator. And then they watched. And before they ran and got themselves into a stressed out situation, they watched. They realized that this particular lioness was limping. And this lioness is limping because she and her pride had been on a buffalo hunt. And in the course of trying to take the buffalo down, the mayhem of that, the buffalo had stamped on one of her feet and broken all the bones in her foot. So she actually can't run anymore. Well, if you can't run with the pride in a hunt, you can't hunt with the pride. And in lion world, if you don't hunt with the pride, you don't eat with the pride. In other words, you get kicked out of the pride. So she and her 1-year-old cub were kicked out. Now she doesn't know anything about hunting at all because she's not a lone hunter. She's a team hunter with the pride. So she had to teach herself how to hunt. And what she taught herself was stealth and surprise. Hide in the tall grass. And you can see lions in a very small patch of tall grass can become almost invisible because of the color identity. Lie and wait for an unsuspecting antelope to come grazing along, and surprise, wham. And she did. She taught herself how to do that. And her cub survived and grew to adulthood. She's still alive. But the important point here is that what she really did was she taught herself to hunt like a leopard, because that's exactly how leopards hunt. They don't hunt in prides. They are sole hunters, stealth and surprise. She didn't go to Leopard U to learn. She taught herself. But in our world, hey, if something isn't working for you anymore, do something different. Learn a different way of doing it. That's the lesson of that brave lioness. Here's another bit of adaptability. This actually, believe it or not, is a riverbed. It's late in the dry season, so it's completely dry, has been for months. And these elephants are doing something. Well, what are they doing? They're actually, with their trunks and with their feet and with their tusks sometimes, they dig a hole. And they've discovered that when you do that, the water that's in the water table will start to seep up into the hole, and you can get a drink. So I'll start the video and you'll see what's happening here. She's getting a nice long drink, and then she'll bring her trunk up out of the water, and a nice rumble of contentment, and squirt it down her mouth. And then kindly and thoughtfully, she moves away from that hole and makes room for another one to come in. Oh, here comes another one. Now she's going to take a look here. First of all, she doesn't like the fact there's too much sand and dirt in the hole. That's got to come out. Gets rid of that, and she starts drinking again. And Junior comes in and says, I don't care what's there, I'm going to drink it anyway. So this is, again, adaptability. The elephants adapting to the fact that they actually can find water where there is no water evident. Why are the impala hanging around in the background? Because when the elephants leave, there'll be enough water there for the impala to drink as well. So I want to show you what happens also in another situation. Here we got an elephant at a different, this is same riverbed, same day, but this one's drinking from a water hole here in the foreground. But that hole towards the back you can see on the left, where that impala is drinking, is much bigger. It's become wider and bigger. When the river is flowing, the river is full of catfish and other animals as well, but the catfish are in this river. As it starts to dry out and gets down to just a mud base because there's no more flow, the catfish actually cover themselves with a mucous membrane, and then they actually burrow and bury themselves under the surface in the mud. And they've got enough of a capsule around them that they're not breathing through their gills anymore. They're actually breathing through their skin, all they need. And they're in virtually suspended animation. The elephants come along, and that's the adaptation, by the way. Huge adaptation on the part of catfish, because when the river flows again, the bed will open up, the water will be there, and the catfish will be in the river. So what's happened over there is what I want to show you next. And that is the elephants have actually created enough of a water hole that it freed up the catfish. See them all wriggling around in the water? So the catfish have gotten caught out by the fact that the elephants opened up the river long before the river came in flow. Unfortunately, the tail end of this story is that there's going to be a leopard or another cat will come along and enjoy a nice fish dinner tonight, because those catfish, they're not going to survive in that little puddle. One more bit of adaptation. This is on the Mana Pools area along the Zambezi River, the banks of the Zambezi River in Zimbabwe. And the riverine forest that's along the banks of the river is populated a lot by this particular tree called the Acacia albida. And all acacias have wonderful seed pods that elephants absolutely love. And in different places where the trees aren't quite as robust as this one, I've seen elephants put their tusks on either side of a tree and their forehead on the tree, and then they rock the tree. And in rocking it, what happens is that the seed pods start to fall like rain. And then he just goes around and hoovers them up. Easy. Well, these trees are a little harder to shake this loose. So these fully grown elephants have taught themselves how to stand on their hind legs and double their height so they can reach up and get the seed pods down. And I don't think there's anywhere else in the world that elephants have taught themselves how to do that other than here in monopools. But again, that's adaptability. I like the seed pods. I don't want to wait for that to fall down in case I'm not here when it falls down and somebody else gets it. I'm going up to get it. Adaptability. Charles Darwin, it's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent. That's bad news for us. It's the one that is most adaptable to change. And Marshall Goldsmith, who some of you may know in leadership and in executive coaching, said this and says this, and it applies to people in your life as well as in your business or in your career. What got you here won't get you there. In other words, things are always changing, and therefore so do you have to change in order to adapt, in order to be able to continue to succeed. So let's talk about our takeaways on adaptability. First of all, change is constant. So we have to adapt in order to survive. It's that simple. Adaptability is not optional, because when things change, we need to adapt. What helps is when you anticipate the future. So for example, we're looking forward now to what will the post-COVID world look like? We'll start anticipating that future and then act on that so that you've already started adapting to a future that is certain to come. Pivot. Do what you must do to thrive. And finally, learn new skills or apply existing skills differently. The lioness, the elephants, but they all adapted in order to meet the change in circumstance. So we go on from there to agility. Well, when we're talking agility, we're both talking mental and physical agility. Here are 4 impala drinking the water hole. When any animals are drinking, any particularly prey animals are drinking, they're always pretty skittish because they know they're at their most vulnerable. Any predator can come up from behind and they're in trouble. So they constantly pick their heads up and look around, make sure, and then they go back down to drink. Sometimes that threat comes from in front of them as well. But they know they're vulnerable. So they're staying mentally really, really agile. 1 second before this next picture I'm going to show you was taken, there were another 4 impala drinking at the water hole. But then this happened. Out of the water came a crocodile, lunging at them. I'm not expecting, and I don't expect us as human beings to be able to do a 6-foot vertical jump from in half a second. But because they were mentally alert and mentally agile, they were already primed to be able to respond in an instant, in a part of a second. And the crocodile, who can be so stealthy, come up under the water, staying under the water, completely submerged, but not even leaving any kind of a ripple on top, and coming slower and slower until he's finally right within range, and then lunge up out of the water. And if you're not mentally agile, as well as physically agile, you're crocodile dinner. So I want to use a Jeff Bezos quote here on agility because it really applies to business. In today's era of volatility, there's no other way but to reinvent. The only sustainable advantage you can have over others is agility. That's it. Because nothing else is sustainable. Everything else you create, somebody else will replicate. That's the point of agility. And that is adapting and very quickly responding and being mentally agile enough to be able to change your business and keep changing it so that it is difficult for others to compete with you or to have to be able to replicate. Our takeaways on agility: stay alert. What else can I say? Stay mentally sharp and ready to respond to anything, and expect the unexpected. And that doesn't mean live in doom and gloom that something is going to go wrong. Therefore, but it means just expect the unexpected and be ready for it when it happens. Complacency, whether it's in business or whether you're an impala drinking at the water hole, can kill you. Stay in shape, mentally and physically. And be ready to respond. And yeah, fastest wins, or put differently, slowest loses if you're an impala by the water hole. but so being able to, ready to respond and be the first one to respond in a change situation. That's mental agility, and that's agility both in our lives and in business. Now we get to this one, care for others. And I want to show you something which shows that caring for others does exist in wildlife. This is a female baboon. And what you'll see when I start the video here is that she's got a baby and the baby's clinging to her chest. Now that's usually the way that the little babies are. This one you'll see is pretty big. Baboons have their safe zone. Their safe zone is up a tree. If there's any threat or any risk at all, up the tree they go, because most animals can't climb a vertical tree. This is a leadwood tree, which is long dead, and so all the bark's gone. So there's not many good places to grip on this tree. So it's not easy to go up. And it's particularly not easy if you've got a baby clinging on your chest. So watch what happens. So she's decided she's got to move because we're there and she needs to move. So she starts going up, and what you'll see is her struggling to hold on, struggling to find a new hold here. And she's going up. And then right here, watch, a hand comes down out of the fork in the tree to pull her up to safety. Let me show you that last part again. It's just, to me, this is so amazing that she's really, that baby is heavy and she is struggling to get up there. And there comes the hand. You see it? It pulls her up into the tree. So the point I want to make with that one simply is this, that even in wild animals, there is a thing called empathy and helping others. Here are some elephants in front of in the water hole, what's right in front of our camp. And they are enjoying a nice drink at the end of a very, very hot day. The reason I want to show you this is I want to show you the water hole is not big and it's shallow, and it would hold maybe 50 elephants. Well, on this particular day, before we even went out for the afternoon safari, elephants started coming in a long parade. Long stream of elephants started coming towards the water hole. So we're standing in camp, and that's where this video is taken from. And what you'll see here is that the elephants are coming, and it's one family after another. There's an adult female, a calf, a couple of juveniles, another adult female, and at the end, coming along will be the matriarch, just making sure that her family is getting to the water. And then right behind her, there'll be the next family coming. It's as if there's a gatekeeper or somebody who is saying, okay, your family can come next, and next you'll be next, because they all come in this long, steady train, which is called a parade, of elephants to the water hole. This went on for about 2 hours. We think it was 300 or 400 elephants came by. Now, that water hole cannot take 300 or 400 elephants, but they're in constant communication with each other, saying, we're coming to the water. And so the ones that are already at the water hole know they've got a drink, take a couple of drinks, move on through the water hole, and then leave and go and create space for the next arrivals to come in. I mean, it is incredibly considerate, and it is so orderly that you just, when you're watching, you think, how is it that the elephants are organizing themselves this well and just doing that? Well, because that's being considerate and thoughtful. They are all desperately thirsty. It's that hot. It was about 100 degrees that day. It's that hot. They're dry. They need their 150 liters, and they need to get some of it. They're not going to get all of it on this one, but it's just top up right now. Now, in this particular case, not everybody got the same message. And in some cases, all that orderly approach to the water hole just doesn't hold. Here's a family led by the littlest one, tail straight out, running for the water. And either they missed their appointment, or else forget about all that nice decorum. We're going for it. And we just, I mean, as this family came by, we were all just laughing because they were just absolutely determined to get there before anybody else could take their chance. But again, it's consideration for others that the elephants were showing there. Your greatness is measured by your kindness, your education and intellect by your modesty, your ignorance is betrayed by your suspicions and prejudices, and your real caliber is measured by the consideration and tolerance you have for others. And in that puts elephants right up there, the top of the heap. So takeaways from on caring for others. Sorry, I got back. Not everyone is as resilient as you are. That's really important, because some people really struggle with having that kind of resilience, and they struggle with the stress, they struggle with the uncertainty, they struggle with the anxieties. Understand that not everyone is wired the same as you may be. And so offer a helping hand to those who are struggling, because that's part of your resilience, is to be able to share and to be able to bring and help others through it. Offer the helping hand like the baboons in the tree, pulling her up. Be genuinely caring, thoughtful, and concerned. Like all those elephants, one stream, one family after another, who are caring enough to say, we're not going to stay at the waterhole and play and just drink and drink and drink and take over the waterhole for the next 3 hours. We've got to share this and move on. And realize this too, that empathy is never more important than when others are stressed. Finally, I just want to talk a little bit about awareness of what it is to be in nature like this. When our guests first arrive at camp, when they first get there, they are stunned and astonished by the space, the amount of vast empty space, the huge sky, the open plains, the savanna, the trees, the forests, and the fact that it's just teeming with wildlife. And then from day one, they realize this is their space. I'm visiting the most pristine wilderness I've ever been in, and it's all populated by wild animals. About 2 days later, when they've gotten used to being in camp a bit and being out on safari in the vehicles, then we go for a walk. We leave camp 5-6 miles away. We leave the vehicles and we start walking. Never are you more aware and alert of your surroundings than when you're walking in the wild kingdom like that. When you're walking in the wilderness, and because you can see some animals through the trees, and there's others you can't see. Now, you're pretty sure there's no predators on right now, because there are impala and the zebras, or there's other animals around. So they're not running from the predators. So, excuse me, you're pretty sure there's no predators around. But at the same time, all of your senses are on full alert. And it's one of the most incredibly exciting times, but it's also a time where you really appreciate the absolute beauty and the wonders of nature. And when you are walking, you also then can start to see some of the tiny little organisms and the tiny things that are going on on the ground. And you start to see the interconnectivity of everything in nature, how it's all connected. That same day, that hot day, there's a little pool at the camp, maybe 15 feet long and 10 feet wide. And 2 of our guests were sitting with their feet in the water, 100 degrees, and all the elephants are parading by to go to the waterhole, except this one family. And I watched them as they turned and wheeled, and they started coming straight towards the pool. Both of these women turned around and looked. We all said, just stay there. It's okay. Keep quiet and watch and experience one of the most amazing things of your life. And for them, this was perhaps one of the most incredible moments in their life, because there they were 15 feet away from these huge, beautiful, incredible animals. And the elephants just were there to drink. And they were able to sit and watch that. In fact, one of them said, I'm sure I could feel the water being sucked out of the pool. Like, it's about 12 gallons in each trunkful, so that's possible. But there's the key part, is that this was a closeness to nature that gives you so much respect for the things we see, the things we learn, and the fact these elephants, led by that matriarch, the big one at the back, led by her, knew that the water in the pool was actually sweeter and cooler and nicer than that other water in the water hole, which all the other elephants have been tramping through. So one other way in which you get to realize just how insignificant we are, not just in the vastness of this wilderness, which is populated by wildlife, but in the vastness of the universe, is to be under the dark, black African sky populated by 1 billion stars. And even if you're an astronomer, everything's upside down or back to front or whatever. And you start to realize we are just such an insignificant part of the vastness of nature. And whether you think that in the context of the universe or you think it in the context of just this 250 square mile nature wilderness that we're in. Bear Grylls, who's an outdoor survivor man type guy, the appeal of the wild for me is its unpredictability. You have to develop an awareness, react fast, be resourceful, and come up with a plan and act on it. And the key there is awareness, because that has to do with all resilience. This is a statement as much about resilience as it is about awareness, but you have to have that awareness, react and be resourceful, come up with a plan and act on it. That is part of what resilience is about. Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "Adopt the pace of nature. Her secret is patience." And if I could give you one suggestion, it would be stop, listen, and learn and watch a lot more. The more we watch, the more we actually see this wisdom of nature, this incredible intricacy of how everything works with everything else and how it's all interconnected. Nature has so much to teach us. All we need is the awareness and the humility and the willingness to learn. The other part of being out in the wilderness like that is you start to realize that we are just a very small part of nature. And we should always be fully aware of that reality. So to sum up, to just one other thing on resilience. Ian McCallum is a doctor, a psychiatrist, a poet, a conservationist, a wildlife guide, and also one of the coolest, nicest people you'll ever meet. And Ian McCallum comes in on some of our safaris as a guest, and he brings a completely different perspective for our guests. You see, Ian, as a psychiatrist, tries to understand the human brain, and as a wildlife guide, tries to understand the animal brain. And so he can put the two together into context. And what he says is this: you've often heard the phrase, "Oh, that's human nature." He says there is no such thing as human nature. There's only nature. And we're a part of it. So in nature, as I said at the very beginning, before we came to the slides, it's adversity that builds resilience. And it's natural resilience that sustains health and well-being in wildlife and in the ecosystem. That's how nature deals with it. And as with the nature we're part of, our resilience in adversity is what makes us stronger and better, both as individuals and as leaders. That's the opportunity of COVID. That's the opportunity of going through this complete disruption and adversity of everything we had ever taken for granted. Let me wrap this up. Be resilient naturally by having a clear sense of purpose, managing your own stress well, being adaptable and mentally agile, helping others who are struggling personally and professionally, and then watch, listen, and learn from nature. One last story. In camp, when we're in camp for a week, on one day we go down to a rural village outside the national park. And it's a very, very poor village. The average household income of that village is less than $30 a month. First thing we do is we go to meet with the headman, and we meet in his meeting hut, and we have a conference with him, an indaba, an African meeting. And our guests ask him all sorts of questions. And he tells them about the village and how what his role is in managing the village and trying to lead the village and run the village. And then we go off to the school, and our guests get 2 or 3 hours with the grade 6 and 7 kids, which is the most inspiring 2 or 3 hours you'll have in a long time, because these kids have so little, and yet they have so much joy and curiosity and excitement and ambition. So one day I was walking with the headman, and I said to him, "Mr. Ngube," I said, "what happens when there's a drought?" And this is what he said: "Hugh, when the rains don't come and the crops fail, the cattle are dying and the children are hungry, I just put one foot in front of the other to lead them to a better tomorrow." So to wrap up with Leonardo da Vinci, the wisest and noblest teacher is nature itself. And I hope that I've shared some of the lessons from nature about resilience that we can adapt and we can take on for our own behavior. And thank you again for giving me so much of your time to listen to this presentation. Thank you.